Okay, my friends, Yale University agrees that my mud fossils are correct for exceptional preservation of soft-bodied Ediacara Biota promoted by silica-rich oceans. And they also say it happened in hours or days, not thousands or millions of years. I'm sure you haven't heard this. All right, remember this, October 6, 2016, Yale News, talking about, they called them sea creatures. Well, it was from a worldwide flood, so that sea is okay with me. Okay, let's work through these statements. They're saying that many of these creatures are outright bizarre in appearance and do not resemble any organism alive today, said Lidya Tarhan, a postdoctoral fellow at Yale and first author of the study. We would like to understand their relationships to the complex animals that evolved shortly thereafter. Are the Ediacara organisms some sort of failed evolutionary experiment, or do they include the ancestors of the animals that subsequently colonized the oceans? Well, what kind of creatures are they talking about? They're showing these kind of little things. Well, what about this? These are the kind of things they're finding on these substrates that they unearthed, and they thought they were all layered because of they do agree that this happened instantaneously. And that's the only reason that these are so well preserved. And then they claim it's about all silicates. Now, I understand the process top to bottom. And I presented all this stuff to Derek Briggs at Yale. And I was rebuffed and called a creationist and refused to be able to allow them to show my stuff to them. I did send it all to him, and he kept sending back that, oh, those are just rocks, those are just rocks. All right, so listen to this now. The researchers realized, they said, was that the oceans during the time were much richer dissolved silica than they are today. Well, why did all of a sudden have one single layer? This is just crazy. It says this enabled the transformation of loose sand around these animals into rock to occur over a matter of hours or years rather than the usual time frame, thousands to millions of years. So this happened within hours, and they're correct. And they were giants, and I have them here. And they talk about how everything happened underwater because it was a giant flood. Now, don't forget, this is precisely what I told Yale since about 2012 up until 2015. I wrote my book finally, and then they published their paper in 2016. Here's another one of their statements. Fossils of the Ediacara Biota are found worldwide. They're everywhere in the world. The rocks ranging in age from 540 to 580 millions of years old. Everything I have here. I have new species. They all came from the Great Flood, which points towards religion and so forth, they must think, and giants. This is a hair follicle. I'll show you this right now. And all of this stuff was preserved in this one layer. Now, it's not 540 million years old. They're all on top of the surface of the Earth. That's not 540 million years ago. It is the surface of the Earth. They just can't understand the sizes of the creatures. All right, don't forget, this is from November 2016. This is when they published their paper about this exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures. And this is the guy right here, Derek Briggs. I presented all my evidence to. Now, not only that, I presented it to all these people. I've emailed them. I've emailed the president of Yale, all of them. And all I ever got back was, you have nothing but rocks. Now they're taking credit for my work. A year after I finally was so fed up, I wrote a book about it. Okay, my friends, we're going to start over again. We're just going to do it. We don't need Yale. We don't need Harvard. We don't need any of those people that just disregard reality. And that's what it is. That's what it's come to, a total disregard of reality. Peer review means you say what they tell you to say or you are off the stage. And they won't allow me to say anything. I presented all this evidence. This is DNA tests from 2015. That's a year prior to when Derek Briggs started publishing all his stuff. The reason I put this up in a way was I don't want you to see who did the tests, because they got assaulted, and they actually did call me and said, don't tell anybody that we extracted the DNA, because it says here they a successful DNA extraction. They didn't extract it. They extracted the DNA from the stuff that I took out of the samples. I did it very carefully. There's no contamination, and he told me there was no question the contamination was ruled out, and they were dense and excellent quality, and they sent it off to the national lab to be tested. I mean, this was very, very excellently done and expensive, and there was 3 samples, and these are the 3 different samples, and these are all the elucidations and whatever it is. It comes down here somewhere. It talks about these are the different positive results, and the negative tests were negative, so there was no contamination. And then down here it says it was excellent quality DNA sequence. It was literally like raw blood. I'll show you where it came out of. And then it goes on and on and on. They were Homo sapien, mitochondrial B, and D loop. That indicates that they were modern human. Now, this, and one was 2 were giants, and 1 was about our size. This is the CTAGs, that's in your DNA. These are the actual DNA sequences. And I mean, I got down to as deep as you could get. I said, I don't care what it is, I don't care what it costs, I want it done, so there's no question whatsoever that this is valid. And that's what happened. Didn't mean anything to you. All right, these are the kind of things I'm talking about. It's like Hesiod and Ovid and Ptolemy and all of the early writers that talked about these giant creatures, that they existed, and even the sea monsters. And I can explain virtually all of this stuff because of Velikovsky. Velikovsky was destroyed, but just as I have been destroyed by academia. And this is when I wrote the book, after Yale took credit for my work. Well, actually before. This was in 2016, January 2016, I think, is the publishing date of this book, Mudfossils and Velikovsky, Minds in Collision. I made it just for 99 cents because I was so pissed off about the treatment I got from Yale and Harvard and all of them. Not one of them passed the test. Absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, this is a disgraceful system. Absolute disgrace. And the people that are going there are just being used. They just pay us a bunch of money, we'll tell you a bunch of stuff, we'll create what's called Menticide. And then you'll go about your life being happy because you've been told you're smart by somebody that forced you to say the things that you now have to say. Now don't forget, Derek Briggs talked to me in the beginning, and I told him I had mud fossils. I named them mud fossils because they were preserved in what I thought was impacted in mud. And he says the same thing, only they call it sand. Well, I realized that wasn't necessarily true. This was a hot water flood. That's why nobody's ever suspected that. And it was worldwide, just like Yale says, everywhere they're found in this one very thin layer, and it happened just like that. And it happened because Venus almost hit Earth, which is exactly what Velikovsky reported. And it's throughout history, everybody had the same story. 3,500 years ago. All my stuff is on the surface of the Earth. All of it is on the surface. It's not buried deep. This is a giant hair follicle. That's the muscle attachment right there. This is the sebaceous gland right here. That's the root. And these are the artery and vein. Now, you see how this is almost exactly the same color everywhere. But it's separated on its fascia planes, which are the membrane that coated the whole outside of the root ball, the membrane that coats the muscle fibers. You see how they're surrounded? That's exactly where that muscle would attach. And also there's a membrane on the hair. There's membranes surrounding the vein and artery, but everything's been invaded. So right now, this is almost all exactly the same chemistry. But originally it was not. Now, let me show you a little deeper. Originally, there was blood and muscle and, all kinds of, well, maybe not that in the hair root, but it wouldn't have been the same. You can see these different colors. That basically indicates different types of tissue layers. And the tissue layers are going to be different chemistry. However, when they get invaded, it's a whole different story. Nucleophilic substitution invades stuff. And it invaded some of my stuff, so you almost can't even tell that there's anything inside of it because it's been so invaded. But you can still see the little patterns I'll show you right now. All right, this lung was DNA tested. This is the lung right here. This is a picture, makes it easy to see. And you can see another one here that has transitioned in a different way. And I have another one here that's transitioned in a totally different way. It depends where it was, the chemistry, the pH, the temperature, the duration of the moisture, all of that stuff plays. And I know now, I've studied this for so many years, I know all of it. I understand all of the process, and I understand why the membranes specifically separated all these things out. And this is flat as a pancake because it was in the Great Flood. And all of this stuff, all of my stuff is flat on one side, almost 100%. And this was just one of the things, and that's about our size. There's the depression of where the heart would have been. It's a left human lung, and it was DNA tested, CAT scanned, all that stuff. This is where the lobes of the lung separate inside there. Now, again, that's a lung. This is a lung. Well, what's the difference here? This one still has all its fascia and pleura surrounding its, membrane, is the membrane rubber bag around it. This one lost all that stuff, all the way down to the alveoli here. And it was like this, with all that red blood in it, and it lifted over this way. So that was on one side, and all the top holes just filled with silicates. This filled with silicates, but the blood remained, and the blood actually ran out in spots. It just bubbled right out of there. That came out of this lung in these little red spots. So this is a lung. That's a lung. This is a lung, and I have so many lungs here because they preserve very well. Hearts preserve very well too. Now, let's go a little deeper. Okay, I showed you the lung and the cats and the DNA and so forth. Now, let's get into the hand. Now, this was a giant hand that I have, and it's, I think, 3 feet, a little more than that wide. And it is a left hand. If you lay your hand back like that, that's the pad, that's the little cleave in between here, and that's your tendon that runs down. It's a left hand, and I have knuckles and fingertips from it and all that stuff. This is actually a bone ball from one of the knuckles that was out here. That's the bone ball. It died flat like this, laying flat back, and it's just flat like the pancake on the bottom. You see it? Almost all my stuff was like that. Now, on the other side, it eroded in such a manner that you can actually see the muscle. That's the muscle. And that's the tendon that runs down. I have all the anatomical books about this. All right, so there's your muscle. There's the tendon that runs down, so you can do this with your finger. The other side, it's completely gone, and all you have is the bone ball. All right, and inside it turns into literally clay. All right, here's one of the fingertips from it, and I had this CAT scanned, and you can't see a whole lot. This is actually the bone right here, and I broke this piece off to get down into where the blood is. I'll show you this in a second, but in the CAT scan from Jesse Grant, you can see stuff. From the one that they did from the University of Texas was absolutely wasted money, and they would charge a lot of money to do that too. Now, this is what I got back. Now, this is this fingertip. All right, and it's like this. There's the bone. All right. You see, you can barely see it. That's the key. You need some really good equipment to do this, to be able to see inside to a nucleophilically substituted bone. This is deeper inside. You really can't see it all that well. But at the end, you can see where the bone sits. So CAT scans in the really mud fossils are not fabulous. But Jesse did a fabulous job. Look, this is the back of that fingertip. Now, again, you look at this, you'd have no idea. It just looks like a piece of mud. Well, guess what? When you can see it here and you understand biology, that's the key. These guys, they think they understand what the names of rocks are, but that's it. That is a tendon. That is a tendon. You see the stalk? That is a vein, the black blood of the vein. That hole right there is where the artery was, and the blood just runs out of arteries. The red blood runs right out. The black turns hard, and this is where the bone is. And this is a thumb from a right-hand person, or giant. because this is big. That's big. That's huge for us. Here's my thumb. And the reason I know it's a thumb is because the bone is offset. See, like that. All your other fingers, the bones are straight out. So that's a thumb. All right, now don't forget, this is the left hand. You see this silvery stuff on the top of the surface? It's like a skin on it. Well, that's exactly what it is. It is what they call a friction skin. I call it grip skin. It's the tough skin that sits over the flesh of your hands and your feet. And so don't forget this. See how it's peeling off? It's just like sitting on there. That just stuff rubs away. That's no big deal. That's the cheap stuff. When you get below that, then you can get invaded. This stuff, you're getting cut all the time. It's not a big deal. All right, this was another one that was on my property. However, I did sell this property, so I no longer own that finger because I couldn't move it. But this is the fingernail. You see that? That's the fingernail. And when I show you the fingerprints, it'll be pretty obvious. And of course, that's the tip of the fingernail. That little round pad sits between bones so that they scrub the pad instead of bumping up against the bone. Now, this piece here I broke off, which sat right up against the fingernail. And I broke it off so that I could get some blood out of there, because you can't get it off of here. This is all of that stuff is like sealed really deep of stone that there's no blood in. But I will show you where I did get the blood from, and I did extract that and sent that to the lab, and they said it was excellent quality. All right, this is what happens when you break off that skin. Remember on the hand, it was peeling all off that silver stuff? Same thing here. It just lays on there like a mat. I'm not kidding you. When I slammed it, it just popped right off. It's about this thick, and it's skin. And it's very heavy duty, and you can't get any blood out of it. This is no blood. It's keratinized skin. It's just like rubber. But down you get down in here, now you got blood, and you got a lot of blood. They're saturated with blood. All right, I said let me just put a little water on this so that it can hydrate. It'll hydrate within a couple of seconds. Your fingertips and your toes are absolutely saturated with blood, because that's the terminal tips where it transfers over from the arteries into the veins and gets sucked back up. All of that is blood. All of these that's blood, and dense. Now, this is a lung, obviously, as I said before, and I'm going to tell you right now, that is exactly turns into just literally solid red blood. That turns into almost like a muddy, bloody paste. And I drilled in with a little pin drill and got some out of there years and years ago. Well, 2015. So, and it was good, excellent quality, and it was human DNA. So there was giants here, and there was regular people here. And there was all kinds of creatures here. It was just a zoo. That's all I can tell you. And even Yale says there was all kinds of creatures that just don't exist anymore. They were bizarre. All right, I'm going to just leave it at this. This is right here. Many of these creatures, many of them are outright bizarre in appearance and do not resemble any organism alive today. This was the postdoctoral fellow at Yale, first author of the study, which is the one that 2016. This was their paper, and then Derek Briggs was the one that I spoke to, and all this is about the professor of geology. Well, guess what happened? They changed the name from geology almost within a year or so of this. It used to be geology. Now I think it's I don't know, planetary sciences or something like that. See this? Earth and planetary science, formerly geology and geophysics. They understand all this. They just want to take credit for it. I see it very, very disgraceful, but that's just me.